I'm Lydia Wilson, a journalist for New Lines magazine and the presenter of the BBC series The Secret History of Writing. I have a PhD on the Arabic philosopher Al-Farabi, and I'm sitting with one of my doctoral supervisors, and now friend, James Montgomery, the Sir Thomas Adams's Professor of Arabic at the University of Cambridge and Fellow of the British Academy. We're here to discuss authors, texts and ideas from the rich heritage of classical Arabic literature.
A translation of verses 1 to 3 of the chapter of Joseph from the Qur'an. Alif, Lam, Ra. Those are the signs of the book which makes things clear. For we have set it down as an Arabic Qur'an, so that all of you may understand it. We will now tell you the best of stories. This recitation we have revealed to you, even though previously you did not pay it any attention.
The Qur'an is the foundational text of Islam. It remains the foundational reference point for the Arabic language, still referred to for questions of grammar. It is a source for law, politics, war and peace. It contains guidance on social norms such as gender roles and social behaviour, and knowledge from mathematics and astronomy to biology. It has been an artistic resource inspiring centuries of reciters and calligraphers. This is all on top of its central position in the devotional practice of Islam. Believers study the Qur'an, with many throughout history memorising it in its entirety as a key part of their education. But what is of particular interest in this podcast, dedicated to classical Arabic literature, is the Qur'an as a literary work. The Qur'an is considered by believers to be the literal word of God, as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad over a period of 22 years, both in Mecca, where Muhammad was born in 570 of the Common Era, and in Medina, the town Muhammad and his followers fled to in 622, an event known as the Hijra, or emigration, marking the first year of the Islamic calendar. There are 114 chapters in the Qur'an, varying from 3 to 286 verses in length, and also varying in content, style and theme, all of which we will be discussing in this episode. Now, James, I think we should discuss something head on, okay? The most famous thing about the Qur'an is, of course, that it's sacred, and sacred to over 1 billion people worldwide. And I have to say, this has been making me anxious. I've been more worried and preoccupied about this episode than any other we've prepared for or already recorded. It just seems, I'm sure this is familiar to everybody, that in our increasingly polarised world, belief and faith are minefields. Even if I tread very, very carefully, I might trigger some mine that's buried somewhere, even if I don't mean it. And we've seen repeatedly through history, offending people's sacred beliefs can lead to conflict. And neither of us, it should be obvious, are Muslims.
Yeah, that's very true.
Have you worried about this?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly, and I think it's a great place to start from. Additional factor that I'd like to add in from my own personal experience before we talk a little bit further about some of the issues. And that is, as you know, I was in South Manhattan on the morning of 9/11.
Yeah.
And I watched the events unfold from my bedroom window. When I came back home on one of the earliest flights, I became very worried that, in a sense, the tradition, the religion, the language that I had spent so much of my life working on were being blamed for this act.
And that was right. They were. You were right to worry about that.
Yes. And also it kind of called into question all the work that I had personally done to try to communicate my enthusiasm, fondness, my love for this subject. And I think I fell into a bit of a state of depression over it and sort of despair at, should I continue, in fact.
Wow, that extends.
Yeah, it became a sort of existential issue. And in the midst of all that, I turned to the Qur'an. which I had been reading on and off and teaching for 25 years or so, up to that point. And I spent a lot of time reading the Qur'an, a lot of time listening to it, a lot of time thinking about it. And I found a huge amount of solace in the text. I found it somehow very comforting. I found it very reassuring in ways that I'm not sure I quite understood. And then, of course, there is a whole tradition of tales within Islam of how the Qur'an has this sort of healing effect.
Yes.
And so I had this very, very emotional tie to the Qur'an in a way that I had not expected to have. And subsequently, I have never actually published anything on the Qur'an.
Had you beforehand?
Yes, I published some aspects of study on the Qur'an in my first monograph, which had been published in 1997. And I'd always intended to continue with the interest that I had, the academic interest that I had in the Qur'an. But it became too personal and it became too emotional and too sensitive. And since then, I published one very, very short thing for a volume in honour of a friend. He asked me to do it, and so I did. But what I did do when I went back to work in the aftermath of 9/11 was that I introduced a course on the Qur'an for my undergraduate students. And I introduced it at the second year level. So they've got enough Arabic to be able to begin to read it in Arabic, but also they're a little bit more mature. It wasn't a standard Arabic language style class. It was more a discussion of the kind of issues relating to the role of the Qur'an in the modern world and everything else. And I taught that course for many years until the university changed its curriculum, and that was one of the things that fell by the wayside. But I have recently reintroduced it back into my teaching. So for me, it's not just that we should be cautious, careful, respectful, sympathetic, empathetic. For me, there's a very deep personal engagement in talking about it.
And while you're explaining all of that, I'm thinking it's almost a duty to keep discussing these things.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, we shouldn't be afraid to talk about difficult subjects.
Yeah.
The moment we start self-censoring, because we're afraid that someone might be upset somewhere, then I think we're in very morally suspect grounds.
And the other thing to say about that is that really it's not a difficult subject. The Qur'an is foundational, as I said in the introduction, to Arabic language, culture, and literature.
And life.
And life.
Yes. I mean, you can't visit the Middle East without being completely imbued in the rhythms of the Qur'an, whether it's call to prayer, whether it's how people speak to each other, whether it's so many aspects of just how people live.
Well, and all the literature we have spoken about and will speak about, so instead of calling it difficult, we should probably change that lens to incredibly rich.
Yes.
And necessary.
Yes, definitely necessary and definitely rich. Yeah, I'd agree completely with that.
Well, let's carry on then.
Sure.
Let's put it in its original context that it emerged, because you've done a lot of work on pre-Islamic poetry, a lot of translations, and prior to this moment in history, there's just nothing like it, is there?
There doesn't seem to be. I mean, there are, of course, religious texts in other languages that are not Arabic. The thing that's unique about this is that it's in Arabic. It's, of course, as you said in the intro, revealed over 22 years. So it's a significant corpus of revelation.
Yeah.
And also, when eventually collected together, it produces a substantial book. we think of pre-Islamic Arabia and early Islamic Arabia as essentially an oral society.
Yeah.
So we have this kind of paradox where an oral society produces a substantial book. And that's quite unusual.
Yes. I did say nothing like it, and I meant in Arabic, obviously.
Yes.
So, yes, there are other books that it explicitly draws on, right?
Yes.
And so that's the biblical...
Or other traditions that it explicitly draws on.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I want to make that little qualification because about, was it 15 years ago or so when we had the whole Syriac controversy where the Qur'an was supposed to be in some places a translation of Syriac Christian hymns. I'm thinking of Christoph Luxemburg's arguments. They were very...
Remind me.
So his arguments were that the Qur'an was best understood and interpreted as an Arabic translation of a set of Syriac hymns.
Right.
And therefore, for example, there were aspects of paradise that had been misunderstood.
Okay.
And so on. And it was a thinly veiled, or not so thinly veiled, re-ignition of the old Islamophobic attack on Islam as being derivative from Judaism, derivative from Christianity.
Yeah.
Of course, Luxemburg's arguments haven't held up at all.
No.
So one of the things that we need to reconsider is the Qur'an reacting to a Judaic tradition, or a set of Judaic texts, or a Jewish book.
Right.
And I think that there are grades of distinction in there that
matter,
that are very important, because we need to move away from all that stuff that used to be said that the Qur'an was a sort of a deformation or a misunderstanding of biblical narratives.
Yeah.
But the type of knowledge of biblical narrative that would have been circulating in Judaism in Arabia at the time when the Qur'an is revealed is something we haven't studied adequately.
Yeah.
And so we're not comparing like with like again, and that brings us back to the lack of context.
Right.
That you mentioned. Because if you have a text that appears almost miraculously out of nowhere, then you can invent whatever context you want for that text.
Yeah, and
that has been used very badly. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're slightly nervous about talking about it.
Yes, because it has been misused.
Yes.
But let's just clarify why it's seen in that way. And that's because there are so many familiar figures in the Quran.
Yes.
It's blatant. It acknowledges that.
Yes.
I mean, it's Adam all the way through to Jesus.
Yes.
The prophets that we're familiar from the Old and New Testaments are there.
Yes.
Many of the stories are similar, all the rest of it. So the content is closely following a lot of these Abrahamic faiths already.
Yeah.
So
there are elements that are very familiar. So
elements, sorry, I shouldn't say the content, some of the content.
Yeah, there are elements that are very familiar. And so the bare bones of the story of Moses, as it's revealed in various chapters of the Quran, do have parallels in the Old Testament. But the issue was it the Old Testament that was circulating in Arabia at the time, or was it interpretations by Jewish rabbis of the Old Testament story of Moses that were circulating?
Yeah.
That's something that we're only now beginning to study seriously.
Yeah.
In fact, there has been a research project in Germany that has been looking at this in some detail. I've only heard a brief talk about it at a conference, but I think it's going to blow the lid off the whole question.
Oh, that's
I wish I
exciting.
could go into it in more detail, but it's not for me, it's for the researchers that have done this to claim the attention. But I was really taken aback by the sort of things that their work had unearthed by looking in unfamiliar places.
Oh, I'm excited to hear more about that at some point. Yeah,
I came away from that talk thinking, I think I've just witnessed something really quite significant.
Well, I don't want to get too far away from the literary aspect of all of this, but there's also the new archaeological evidence coming out, because Saudi is putting an awful lot of resources into archaeology. And I was on a dig there, I don't know if you do, but I was on a prehistoric excavation, and there were major Jewish finds coming up along the Silk Road oasis towns.
Yes.
And I don't think a lot of those have been published yet, because it's all very recent. So maybe we're about to learn a huge lot more about the 6th century Arabia.
Yeah, I think the opening up generally of this material, because there's also the work that's been done on the pre and early Islamic inscriptions, and that's starting to show that there was quite a widespread form of Christianity in certain parts that we knew about from the historical record, but didn't have the documentary evidence. And so I think we're at a kind of point in our understanding of the environment of the Qur'an where, again, the whole issue of context becomes challenging, because often a lot of this material can also be ideological.
Yeah.
So if you think about the one thing that has marked the study of the Qur'an in the last 20 years is the amount of work that's gone into the Qur'an's relationship with late antiquity.
Yes.
So Luxembourg, that I referred to earlier, is another inflection of that. Understand Syriac Christianity, understand the Christian Psalms, you understand the Qur'an. And of course, that is not an innocent tool.
No.
And so the challenge for all of us who are working in this field is, whilst there's a lot of very, very promising material that's coming out, the challenge is to be honest about what our intentions are.
Absolutely. And
in
where
investing so much time and energy in this. And it's not always innocent. The whole emergence of the arguments concerning the Christian background to the Qur'an have obvious implications.
Yeah. Well, let's go back then to the Qur'an in itself, on its own merits.
Yes.
Although I'm very excited to hear more about the Jewish context. But so we've covered why there are those arguments might be made, because there is familiar material in there if you are Jewish or Christian. So should we think about what's different instead? So first of all, actually, we should say what Qur'an means, where the root comes from.
I wish that were an easy question to answer.
I know.
So there are two possibilities, and actually touches on the stuff that we've just been talking about. The first is that it's an Arabic word.
Yeah.
It comes from the verb qara'a, which means to read.
Yeah.
So a Qur'an is, as it were, something that can be read. The other is that it is an Arabic loan word taken over from Syriac, Qaryana, which means a text that would be read, a lectionary, a text that would be read at a religious service.
Right.
The two are not so different.
No.
But you choose which one you want. You have to be very honest with yourself about why you're opting for one over the other,
right.
as I've just said.
And we should at this point say the two languages are related. They're Semitic languages.
Yes,
so along with Hebrew and many others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I should have made that clear.
So it's like comparing maybe a French and a Romanian word, or maybe something like that.
Yeah, or some word in English that came across with the Norman conquest. So whatever, right?
Yeah. So they are similar, but it was an oral revelation, wasn't it? It was.
Yes.
The Prophet Muhammad spoke.
Yes.
The revelation.
What he revealed. What was
revealed.
Yes. Although some of it may have been written down by members of the early community.
As he spoke, you mean, in real time? or quickly?
Afterwards, if we're dealing with effectively an oral society where people's memories are much more attuned to retaining information, we've lost that art. Unless, you're a musician or something and you've trained your brain
to
memorize and access those skills. And there various writing materials appear to have been used. The shoulder blades of camels were used. There was palm fibre. If you scrape the bark off palm trees in a certain way, you get very good writing material. There may have been a form of papyrus, perhaps. Perhaps animal skins. So it's an oral revelation, but with a possible written
form.
Perpetuation or form, yes.
And so then we get a key moment, which is the codification into a single book. All of those things are writing down chapters initially, right? And so can you talk about when it turns into a book?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, there are so many theories of how this happened and why it happened and when it happened and so on. But let me just try and give an overview of the key points. So there was probably an attempt to, once Prophet Muhammad died in 632 of the Common Era, there was a sense that the revelation, of course, was now over, and therefore the community should record it. And there are some who argue that it was collected during the lifetime of the Prophet. Some who argue that it was exclusively after his death. It looks as if there was a team of scholars and people who had been close to Prophet Muhammad who were entrusted with this task. And they produced a collection or a version of the Qur'an. It seems as if there may have been more than one. Because eventually, as the community spread from Arabia into Syria, Iraq, and so on, even further afield, there was a concern that some of the readings of the Qur'an that were being used in prayer or so on in various parts of the Islamic State were not consistent with each other. And so it is the Caliph Uthman, who is the third caliph, who is credited with the move to codify it, collect it. Although there are people that say he didn't. So, I mean, it's very... we're talking about a subject where a disagreement is the order of the day.
But also it should be said that Uthman wasn't just the third caliph, but a companion of the Prophet. And so he had that legitimacy, I would say, as well, that he was there.
Although he, in later Islamic history, becomes one of the bad guys. So he is quite a divisive figure. But I think we have had attempts to rewrite this, to rethink that. What I'm absolutely amazed by, and I'm amazed but not surprised, if I can make that distinction, is that we always come back to the traditional story, and that the tradition has gifted us of the Uthmanic recension and possibly some collection of the Qur'an before the death of the Prophet, then a team of scholars putting it together. That story persists, no matter how hard some scholars try to destroy it and reduce it to rubble. It keeps coming back because the more evidence that we find, the more likely it looks. So I think in the end, although people allege this, they counter-argue with that and so on, and there are extreme skeptics who say none of this took place. Of course, 1972, was it, when a very notorious book was published called The Sectarian Milieu, where the composition composition, mind you, not collection, of the Qur'an was claimed to be by a group of messianic individuals in Iraq in the 8th century or whatever. So everything has been argued on the subject. But still, the story that the tradition gives us seems to me to be as effectively the one that we should just...
Well, I'm pleased to hear it because I've actually visited the Ottoman Qur'an.
Oh, well, lucky you.
I know, it's in Tashkent in Uzbekistan.
Wow.
And what was really surprising to me was that it's huge.
Yes.
Really huge pages,
yes.
very sparsely written,
yes.
huge font size. I know that's an anachronism, but the letters are really, really big, lots of white space. Which, I mean, for me, it's extremely hard to read. It's got no diacriticals at all, no dots on the Arabic letters, let alone the vowels that modern Qur'ans have to help recitation. But it's very beautiful and it's just very impressive as a physical object. And bearing in mind, this is written on vellum, it's parchment, it's animal skin.
Yes.
It's not just one herd of cows, it's many.
Yes.
It's an impressive object in many ways. And one of those is the amount of money it must have taken. Yeah. Another is the sheer size. The beauty and regularity of the writing is astonishing. I know they were trained in a different way to us, but still just very beautiful. And that's over and above the religious and historic significance it has, given that it's credited to Uthman's time. Yeah. So, it's...
Oh, lucky you.
I know.
And of course, the other thing that we might think about in terms of how the script was written is that we're still dealing with an oral society that uses memory. Yeah. And so the written form becomes like an aid memoir or a correction. And not so. You've got the Qur'an in your brain, and what's printed on the page is what you confirming what's in your head.
Yes.
So lots of academics give lots of lectures. They could probably many of them could probably turn up, give the talk without having the use of notes. Yeah. But they've got their notes with them. Yeah. And so the notes become the aid memoir. They become the thing that just helps your memory along. And so in a lot of the form of the script that was used, it's used effectively to support a memorized Qur'an. And of course, then when dots are introduced and when vocalization is introduced, we're seeing a shift away from a memorized Qur'an to a read Qur'an. And I think that probably has to do also with the kind of spread of empire and with the joining of the Islamic community by a lot of non-native
Arabic speakers. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that standardization in order to help them. Yes. Yeah. And to make sure they've got the right version.
I had a very good friend who studied Arabic grammar, and one of his great arguments was language control is people control.
Language controls people control.
Yeah, control the language, control how they speak, control how they think.
Yes.
It's not that far from, George Orwell's Newspeak or whatever. I often wonder to myself, and I just throw this out there, I have absolutely no evidence for it, but I often wonder to myself whether the introduction of the standardization and the formatting, as it were, wrong word, of the Quranic codex has not got something also to do with state control, empire, bureaucracy.
Well, there's a feature that we haven't mentioned, even though it's quite fundamental to the codification, and that's how you order verses. If they've all been written on, some on leaves, some on bark, but on small pieces of material and not put into a book, then you've got to decide what order they go in. Yes. So that this is sometimes surprising if you're coming to the Qur'an as a novice, that it's ordered by length. Yeah. Why was that decision made, that shortest and, the length was the important factor?
So let's just begin by saying that length is longest to shortest.
Yep.
But that's a general rule, is not uniformly followed all the way through. So there are some surahs that are shorter that come before others. Chapters, I should say. Surah is the Arabic term for the chapter of the Quran. There are some chapters that are shorter that come before longer
How did that
chapters.
happen? Do we know?
I don't know what the real answer to that is. I mean, I've got a number of ideas. So the Quran doesn't set out to tell a narrative. It tells a story. It tells a story of how man has the opportunity to be saved by a merciful God by listening to God's message, and that's its basic story, and that this message is communicated via Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah.
But it's not a narrative in the sense that it begins with the creation and ends up with the apocalypse.
No, not like our version.
So, but that's only one way of looking at how to organise a body of material.
Yeah.
And it seems to me not unnatural that you might think, not in, as it were, narratological terms, but you might want to begin with the longest or begin with the shortest. I don't know why one was chosen over the other, why it's not shortest to longest or longest to shortest. I do sometimes think, though, that because each chapter of the Qur'an usually contains a variety of different styles of speech, of kinds of speech, that this organisation somehow seems to recreate the kind of experience of receiving the revelation piecemeal over 22 to 22 years.
Yeah.
That each chapter within itself, the longer ones in particular, you might get warnings or admonishments. You might get a narrative about one of the prophets. You might then get some rules about inheritance laws or whatever. And this must have been, in a sense, what it was like for Revelation to be experienced. Because it wasn't, I think it highly unlikely, if you take, for example, the longest chapter in the Quran, that of the cow, Al-Baqarah, number 2, I think it very unlikely that the revelation started with verse 1 and ended with verse whatever it is. And it all came down in one go. And in fact, some scholars have looked at various styles within the Quran and suggested that, well, perhaps this was a set of responses that the community could repeat after the revelation, a bit like a sort of litany.
Yeah.
So I think the way in which it's organised is counterintuitive to us because we're so narratologically indoctrinated. I remember sitting with one of my children when he was trying to read, and we had one of those wonderful little kind of paper books, cardboard books, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Big pictures, big words, very simple story. He wasn't interested in starting at page 1 and getting to page 10. He would read page 2 and then flip it over to page 8.
Really?
And then go to page 4. And he just seemed to be completely resisting the impulse that we force on our children to learn narratologically, to begin at the beginning and end at the end. And I thought to myself, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it shows you how much of a construct it is for us.
Right. We've been trained without knowing it.
Yes. And so because we kind of almost, I was going to use the word indoctrinated. That might be too strong a word, but because...
Let's say trained.
Yeah, trained. That's a much more neutral word.
It is.
And it kind of takes something like modernism to come along and, explode all of the... linearity, thank you.
Yeah.
That we then all of a sudden think, oh, it's not natural after all.
No, it's not how our brains work. It's not,
And so when I do think about the structure and organisation and presentation approach to the Qur'an, I think of it that in that sense that it makes me realise how artificial my narratological
tendencies
are.
Yeah, well, me too, but I'm only just thinking about it now, so I have to go away and think about that a bit.
Yeah, and so you find, for example, that there's the one prophet in the Qur'an who gets, as it were, the most exposure is Moses.
Okay.
But his story is told piecemeal
all over the place
in many different chapters. You can piece it all together, and you can make a narrative out of it
if you want to.
But that's not what's important.
No. Well, you've touched on something there when you were talking about how it had been revealed over such a long time, and you were saying, oh, there's a lecture here or an admonition here. So you've just alluded to one of I think of as one of the major differences with the Old and New Testament that I'm more familiar with, probably. And so I wondered if we could just cover what is actually in the Qur'an. The variety, the types, and you just kind of mentioned it, but can we flesh that out?
So I said previously that most chapters of the Qur'an present us with a variety of different sort of speech acts, let's call them that, kinds of speech.
Right.
So you might find that there are warnings or admonishments to the audience, to humans, that they ought to mend their ways, they ought to improve, that they're not responding to the Creator in the appropriate manner, i.e., the fact of our creation is a gift given to us, and we should be grateful to that gift. And the way in which we express that gratitude is one of the main moral and ethical and legal implications of the Qur'an.
Yes.
So it's setting out for us that once we wake up and realize that we're being selfish or we're being ungrateful or that we are not preparing our souls for the afterlife, it then the ethical and moral and legal prescriptions become a kind of guideline for living, a kind of manual model for how to live our life. So you might get admonitions, then you get a sort of sermons. They might often take the form of narratives of the destruction of previous peoples.
Yeah.
So although the Qur'an is not organized historically, it is completely informed by its sense of history.
Yeah.
Its sense of how it relates to the past.
Yeah.
And how its community should behave in order not to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Yes.
So in the chapter of the poets, which is number 26, there's a sequence of narratives of how people were sent prophets, disregarded the prophets, didn't mend their ways, and then ended up being destroyed by God. And so each instance of destruction is told in a sequence. A very powerful set. I think there are 7. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the methods of destruction, be it flood or whatever, you can see that the next in the story, what hangs it all together is that the next people try to avoid the fate of the previous.
Yeah.
So once there's been a flood, they try and build a huge tower.
Yeah.
And then there's a whirlwind that comes along and destroys the tower. And so they think, oh, we'll live in caves.
Yes.
Right? And so it goes on. And so it's a kind of sequence of human obstinacy and an inability or an unwillingness to realize that their Creator is not only more powerful, but actually knows more than they do.
Yeah.
So you might get this sort of sermon that deals with those sort of subjects. Then, of course, there are the legal prescriptions, ordinances, rules. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about them. I have to be perfectly honest. The verses on inheritance, I'm not sure that I really understand, but that's why there are within the Muslim communities, there are experts that you go to help you work out how to do inheritance law. So I don't feel particularly
It's
bad for not being able to get my head around them.
but it's a whole branch of knowledge.
Yes, it is. It's in and of itself. So then there are those sort of legal ordinances. And then when you get to the shorter chapters at the end of the Qur'an, they all tend to deal with the end of the world. They're apocalyptic. They're very short. The imagery is very, very intense. You know, the mountains, which were considered to be signs of immortality, are plucked up like carding wool and thrown about. The earth opens up in chasms. They're so powerful. They're so visceral in their imagery. And they're very short. And it's almost like poetry. I know that the Qur'an isn't poetry, but it's almost like poetry because they're rhythmical.
Yeah.
And some of them, the verses will rhyme with each other. And one can just imagine listening with complete terror to when these visions of what's about to happen were being revealed by someone who was in communication with the divine. You know, they're the ones that I find myself drawn to repeatedly. I've always enjoyed the narratives of the prophets. I think partly I like the shorter ones the most at the end because they're the ones that seem to me to be the closest to the pre-Islamic Arabic of the poetry that I'm most familiar with.
Right. But I did read somewhere that the apocalyptic content is a full 10% of the Qur'an.
Yes.
So although they're short, there's a lot of it, isn't there?
And it's not all contained. The apocalyptic stuff's not all contained at the end.
No.
And
it's a theme.
The Qur'an's insistence is that the apocalypse can happen anytime. You know, it can happen now.
Yeah.
And you really have to think about that.
Yeah,
you know.
Live your life.
Of course, the big problem that we have, let's say, with global warming is that we all kind of, with one part of our brain, know that we're destroying the world.
Yeah.
But the other part of the brain, we can't get our head around it. And what is now, you know, in terms of our lifetime.
Yeah.
And so you inhabit this kind of fractured mental state.
Yeah.
And I think apocalyptic thoughts are very similar to that.
Right. It's not happening right now.
Yes.
I can see it isn't.
Yes.
But...
Yeah. How do you live in a state of constant preparedness? That is... and that's a message that whether you're Muslim or atheist or whatever, that's one of the things that the destruction of the planet is forcing upon us.
Yeah.
We have to live in a state
Yeah.
of constant preparedness. And preparedness doesn't mean sitting around waiting for the disaster to happen. Preparedness means acting now to prevent the disaster or postponing it for as long as we possibly can. I'm not sure that we can prevent it. It's too far gone. But
oh no, that's too much
sorry
to delve into. But can I pick up on one thing, and that's your use of the word legal? Now, there are equivalents in the Old Testament, actually, I think, like in Numbers and all of that.
Yes.
If you know the price you have to pay for certain misdemeanors. That's not a tradition in the Christian New Testament, because it's render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. The law is very much separate to the domain of followers of Jesus. So where does legal sit in the way you've been using it? What does the Qur'an say about how much it should guide the whole society? That's
an interesting question, something I never actually thought about. And given that I've already had a bit of a disclaimer about the fact
that you're not into jurisprudence.
Yes, that the legal verses are the things that actually I feel less qualified to talk about. But I guess I would say that what we have to think of is not so much a set of specific rules, although there are specific rules about this, that, and the other. The Qur'an wants to help us be saved. That's the message.
Yeah, that's the underlying purpose.
Yes, yeah. And of course, we now know that the personal is not only the political, but it's always been the legal.
Right.
Right? So when I use legal, I'm thinking in terms of how I regulate my life.
Yeah. Isn't it more social, legal?
Possibly, if you want to make that distinction.
I mean, it's society-wide rather than personal.
But it has to begin somewhere.
Right. Yes, of course. And we live according to our laws.
Yes. Or
some of us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that English law prioritizes property over individual, like, wellness or whatever.
Yeah.
So I tend to think that I would rather look at myself, if this is what's understood by legal, not as a piece of property.
Yeah.
In a way that, maybe naively, as a kind of child of the 60s and infected by hippie ideals, that if we all behave differently, then the system would have to change.
Right.
Right? So I'm thinking of legal in that sense.
Yes, got it. Well, let's turn away from that to the literary aspect of it.
Yes.
It's as varied. I think you have already sort of mentioned that the shorter chapters do seem to have more in common with the pre-Islamic poetry.
Yes.
Literary conventions.
Yes.
But just as the content is so varied, the styles are very varied, aren't they?
Yes.
Between the different verses. Can you begin to capture some of that variety?
Yeah, so variety, let me think what you mean by that. Literary variety?
Literary, yeah, rhetorical devices and types of, you've already mentioned rhythm and rhyming.
Yes.
But that's not throughout, is it? I mean,
well, most of the verses of the Quran will end on a rhyme, but it's not monorhyme, as it is in Arabic poetry.
Okay.
So you can get a repeated rhyme 3 or 4 times,
right?
But then you might get a different rhyme and so on.
Right.
Within the same chapter,
yeah.
Possibly within the same kind of speech act.
Yeah.
And what that means is that some people divide the verse length of the Quran up differently depending on where they think the rhyme is.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a European edition of the Quran, I think, from the 19th century, which basically reorganized the Quran based on what the scholar thought the rhyme scheme was, and it wasn't the same as the accepted Quran in the Islamic community. So that brings me, the reason I mention this is because there's lots of internal rhyme.
Yes.
Because it's a text to be listened to.
Yeah.
As anyone who you just go on YouTube and listen to some of the professional tajweed, the recital of the Quran, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, it's mesmerisingly beautiful.
Yeah. And of course, it's partly because it was an oral and an aural, i.e. an auditory text, but also it has a whole lot of what we would consider poetic or literary devices, like internal repetition of particular sequences of consonants to create a particular sound.
Sound effect, yes.
Yes, there are aspects that we would consider more, as it were, rhetorical, so perhaps antithesis or anaphora or any of those devices. And so what we draw from that is that the Qur'an is a text full of artifice. It's not artificial. It's full of
explain
linguistic artifice.
Oh yeah, construction.
Yes, there's a lot of there's a huge amount of verbal skill.
Yes.
In each verse.
Is this why it has the reputation? It's widely said to be inimitable, as in uncopyable.
It's part of that discussion. I mean, I think the question of the doctrine of the inimitability of the Qur'an has more to do with interfaith polemics in the 9th century in Baghdad.
Oh, okay.
Because from what we can tell, the Christians were attacking the Muslims because their prophet had not worked a miracle.
Oh. Ah.
Right? And so the argument comes about that the Qur'an is in fact Muhammad's miracle.
Right. Okay.
But and so what the inimitability doctrine of the Qur'an draws on are the sort of things that we've been talking about. It looks for it. It looks at it in terms of its linguistic skillfulness. Artifice is probably gives the wrong impression, but it's artifice in the sense of being carefully produced.
Yeah.
But not artificial. I
Yeah.
don't want that to be inferred from what I meant.
Rhetorically.
Yes.
Yes, from precisely the aspect I wanted to look at it, which was literary.
Yeah.
So I know we haven't got that much time, but can we take a single surah
Sure.
of Yusuf is what we plan to talk about today.
Yes.
And we spent a lot of time on the Quran as a whole, which is great, but we have got time, haven't we, to just kind of...
Sure.
I mean, tell me why you choose this one when you're teaching for this episode.
One of the things that's changed, I've noticed, in the many decades that I have been in the classroom is that knowledge of the Bible can no longer be taken for granted.
Even with the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical.
Well, I mean, one chooses Joseph because...
Oh, seriously?
Yes, because more kids are likely to have sung or heard something from the musical than to know the story of Joseph from the Bible.
Got it. So that's one of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons, because what you want with your students is for them not to feel an overwhelming sense of distance from what they're reading.
Right.
So, although the last time I asked this question in class, very few of my students actually knew about the musical. And so I think now it's something from when musical was really popular.
When I was at school.
Yes, we knew it at school.
Let's not say a date.
So I'm not sure that reason actually stands anymore. But the other thing that you choose it for, or I choose it for, is because it's a single contained narrative.
Yes.
Right? And we've already spoken about narratological... What was the word you used? I used indoctrination. You used something... Training. Much more positive.
Yes.
And so that allows a kind of lessening of the divide between the student and the material.
Yeah.
Because the students that I've been reading this with are in the second year. And they don't have a huge amount of Arabic. And certainly not a huge amount of pre-modern Arabic.
Quranic,
You've got a lot of modern Arabic, but and so the challenges involved in reading it in Arabic are already
really
significant.
High. Yeah.
Yes. So anything you can do in the classroom to lessen the burden.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to do is to put them off.
Right.
Right? I mean, no one when I was at university made any concessions to whether you were going to be put off by what you were being taught or not. You were just taught it.
Yeah, and you took it
or not. Like it, lump it, you're examined on it, forget it, get on with your life. And I would quite like my students, if possible, to think that they had an opportunity to get exposed to the Qur'an, and that it wasn't,
pulling teeth.
Yeah, a visit to the dentist, right? I mean, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was demanding.
Yeah.
But
classical Arabic is.
Yes, that they could get something a little bit more out of it.
Now, I think one of the most telling things I could say about this is actually our friend Shaukat Tarawa's...
Yes, I was going to bring this up.
Right. So he translated it. Do you want to talk about that?
So our friend Shaukat Tarawa's professor of Arabic at Yale, he is a practicing Muslim, very prominent in the Muslim community, and he's just published a series of translations of the Qur'an, of chapters from the Qur'an that he calls the devotional Qur'an.
Yeah.
And he concentrates, the first time ever, on those chapters of the Qur'an that resonate particularly profoundly with Muslims, be it in their daily lives or in their lives, not just sort of on a day-to-day basis, but perhaps for the end of Ramadan or whatever,
Okay.
right? Communal lives is the word I was looking for.
Right.
But he had the great idea when it came to the chapter of Joseph to notice that most of it is, the story is told through conversation.
Yeah.
It's not then this happened and that happened. Someone says something, someone responds.
Right.
And the story is generated out through the responses, through the situations.
Yeah.
And he thought, oh, it's like a play. Why don't I
Absolutely.
divide this as a play, translate it? And in fact, what I did with my students this term was we performed it.
Really?
Yes, in class.
Amazing.
So I circulated it beforehand.
Yeah.
And my colleague, Caris Alsock, she joined us. And there were enough of us just about to do all the characters.
Well, there's a lot of them.
There is.
Did
There
you get
was some-
all 12 brothers?
Well, no, one person played all the brothers, right?
Got it.
But there
yeah.
wasn't too much duplication.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, of course, British people are not particularly good at the first time that they're with in a class. The first time I met them, in fact, I'd emailed them and warned them, but I was expecting some reserve and some hesitancy
Yeah.
and the usual kind of British sang-froid where it's, we're not up for this.
Yeah.
But the error, it was very interesting. It so cleverly did what we were talking about earlier without needing to know about Andrew Lloyd Webber or had to have sung, whatever the song is about the Technicolor.
Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yes.
Because the other major part about this surah and the equivalent story in the Old Testament is it's drama.
Yes.
It's just so dramatic. There are so many twists and turns to that story.
Yes.
And so many different elements. And I'm thinking of prison, slavery, working in a palace, exile, disguise, dreams, just all sorts of different aspects.
Family conflict.
So, probably, family conflict. Andrew Lloyd Webber probably saw the same thing.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that the narrative in the Bible is of course a narrative.
Yeah.
And it tells the story. The Qur'an constructs its story through interpersonal relations.
Yeah, yeah.
And not all the characters are telling the truth. Some are telling half-truths and don't realise they're telling... Some are telling the truth, don't realise they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And what you get is you construct this sense that it's really about how much one can know about another person.
Yeah.
In terms of your dealings with them. How far is it possible to go to be dishonest to achieve an end?
Well,
because what's paradoxical is that the brother's initial dishonesty, first of all by wanting to kill Joseph, but then he's saved by being put in a well, actually works in the end in their favour because of how God cares for Joseph.
Yeah.
So you have this initial act, a brutal act, where foiled fratricide that then leads to enslavement.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the end leads to the ennoblement of the whole family. And of course, what the brothers are worried about in the early conversations that they have about what to do with Joseph is that they are not sufficiently strong as a family because Jacob loves Joseph more, they think, than he loves them.
Yeah.
But of course, God organizes things in such a way that Joseph produces what it is that the brothers want at the end of the chapter by strengthening the family and ennobling it and so on. So,
so the chain of events.
And also punctured throughout the whole story are these very dramatic moments where a person's identity, be it their true identity or be it their situational identity, is cast into question. So when Joseph is accused by what the tradition later referred to as Zuleika, when he's accused of attempting to seduce her, you have this very dramatic situation in which one identity is forced on another person. There's a situational identity. Was he guilty? Wasn't he?
Right.
But then his true identity can only be revealed by the verdict, both going in his favour but also against him, because he ends up in prison. He's cleared of the charge, but then he ends up in prison. And his situational identity has to be rejected in order for his true identity to
eventually unfold.
Yes, to eventually unfold.
And there's also, I'm thinking of hiding identities that his father originally says, don't tell the brothers your dream.
Yes.
Because they'll be jealous.
Yes.
And so his skills, as we come to know it's prophecy, are hidden from the start.
Yes. No, it's very true. And throughout the chapter, we watch Joseph realize the depth of knowledge he has thanks to prophecy.
Yes.
We begin to see him understand his gifts and his role. And it's not just as an interpreter of dreams. That's one of the stages along the way. And so what it does is it constructs over about 112 verses this wonderful kind of epistemological maze.
Yeah.
Who knows what about whom, about what, and when. And of course, in the background, almost invisible, but not quite, is the one who knows everything.
Yeah. And
God.
And loves Joseph.
Yes, i.e. God is just coordinating all these events. And the message is, of course, that we don't always see we never see the full picture. And so you have this horizontal axis of knowledge, which where everyone is all confused about motives and about intentions. The only exception is Jacob, who has a kind of inkling, a prophetic inkling of things that are going to happen.
Right.
And then you have the vertical axis between God who sees everything and the humans who are acting.
Yes.
As they're acting.
Well, and Joseph's sort of in between those two planes.
And he's the mediator.
Yeah, as prophet.
And so there's a lot in the tradition, the Islamic tradition of how Joseph is a sort of very much a model for Prophet Muhammad.
The mediator.
Yes.
And the interpreter of messages.
Yes, the connection on the vertical axis between God and humans. And there was a time when it was very popular to connect this with this chapter with a stage in Prophet Muhammad's career, where things weren't going well in Mecca. It was before the Hijrah to Yathrib, which then became renamed eventually as Medina, and that this was dated to the what they called the late Meccan period.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, to sum up, I would say that a lot of what we've talked about has touched upon various literary features of the Qur'an. And I'd like to ask you what's to be gained from this type of reading, looking at the Qur'an as literature.
Thank you. So, first of all, let me be really awkward and say, just for a change, and say, I'm not an advocate of reading the Qur'an as literature because of the problems I have with literature and not the problems that I have with the Qur'an.
Right.
But the literary Qur'an, I think what it offers both believers and non-believers is an opportunity to approach the Qur'an without focusing exclusively on the theological, political, or legal aspects of it. It reminds us that this is a kind of unique text in world literature. And it gives us an opportunity, I think, approach the issue that concerned the anxiety, the tension that we both were worried about at the beginning, to put that to one side and to appreciate the Qur'an without getting embroiled in those particular issues.
Yeah.
And at first, when this movement started in the late 80s, I was very interested to see how successful it would be with a Muslim audience, because although it was pioneered by a Muslim, my concern was, again, the ideological concern that I was talking about earlier, that by identifying it as a literary work, we would then tend or have a tendency to think of it as a fictional work.
That's the problem.
So there are pitfalls in it.
Yeah.
But again, as I hope becomes clear, if we're honest about our intentions and empathetic and sympathetic and careful about how we frame the discussion, I think that it's a really fruitful way to read and appreciate the Qur'an.
It's fascinating. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we could have gone on for so much longer.
Hours.
Yes.
Easily.
Yeah.
Such a rich topic. I encourage everyone to go and listen to the recitations online.
Yes.
Really beautiful.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Thank you very much for downloading this podcast.